Hey guys, it is finally time to learn about our BLI Team shared folder, aka OneDrive. Part of the challenge of talking about OneDrive and shared folders and all that kind of stuff in Microsoft Office 365 world is the fact that number one, there are a lot of different names for the same thing, and also there are a zillion different ways to accomplish the same task. So what I'm going to do today is focus on a specific workflow that I think will most closely emulate the NetDrive experience that we're all accustomed to. And hopefully that will make this whole thing a little bit easier. As you go through and become more familiar with the tools and the terminology and the processes, obviously you can own those processes and make them your own. But I'm going to try to make it as simple as I can today for you. So the requirement for this, since we are using our desktop versions of Outlook and OneDrive, is to make sure you have installed Office desktop apps. And we do that by going to office.com, clicking on that orange button in the upper right hand corner that says Install Office. We're not going to do that right now because I've already done that on this computer. And because it's relatively self-explanatory process. Simply click on that button, follow all the prompts, make sure you have your office.com credentials handy because that's really the only thing you should have to enter. Otherwise, just take all the defaults. The only choice we have is right at the beginning. Instead of taking the more advanced option of other install options, just simply click on the Premium Office Apps option. So among the choices we have right at the beginning to get to our shared folder, we could, from office.com, click on OneDrive, which brings us to the interface that we have become a little bit familiar with recently, and then we would go to our shared library called BLI Team by clicking on that. Another way we can get to it is by instead going through SharePoint, which is the internal website building app in Office 365. We're going to go this route today just because of the fact that the most recent link I sent you in the email exercises I've given you for our shared library have been through SharePoint. Clicking on the SharePoint link here is going to bring you to a choice of sites. Right now we only have 2 or 3 choices. Ultimately, we'll probably have more as we get more as we become more sophisticated users of Office 365. But the only one we're interested right now is this one called BLI Team. This is basically it's our home intranet site, and we're really just scratching the surface today of all the things we can do here. We're going to be able to share news, activity with each other, build things. We're going to be able to share calendars, time off. Lists of ideas, all kinds of stuff. But the only thing we care about really today is that shared library, which we can get to, excuse me, either by going to the Documents area in the right-hand corner and clicking on See All, or we can go to the menu on the left and select Documents. Either of those clicks will bring us to the same place. The next step we're going to take, having installed our desktop applications, is we're simply going to sync this entire library to our local drive. That means what we see in the cloud, we're also going to have on our local drive, which is going to make the search function much quicker and easier. This is the part that's going to take the most time. So I would recommend that you probably want to click on that button in the evening when you're ready to step away from your computer for the night, and that is going to start that syncing process, and our entire library is going to then sync down to your machine so that you have access to everything. I'm not going to do this now because I've already done that, as you can see, so I'm just going to close out of that. And at that point, you can either go directly to your file manager if you're comfortable with that, or if you'd rather let OneDrive guide your navigation, you can hover over the blue cloud in the bottom of your taskbar. If you don't see it there, it might be hidden under the other icons. So clicking on that up pointing arrow, you'll find it there. Clicking on that is going to give you a few options. For one thing, as that synchronization process is happening, you're actually going to see the files in the list, and you'll actually see them downloading to your computer. What we want to do right now, however, is open folder, which is going to be the same as navigating to it in our file manager. I'm just going to go ahead and use that open folder button, and we are brought directly to our Balancing Life's Issues shared drive here. So this should look fairly familiar to you. This is the same place we always used to access what we used to call the OneDrive or NetDrive or whatever you called it on your own machine. But this is where the root of that is going to be. Now notice that mine doesn't look exactly like our team library, and that's deliberate. I don't have time to sync the entire library before I do this demonstration, so I just synced a few folders just for demonstration purposes. So the machine I'm on is emulating Jake's machine, so we're going to see how the folders look from his perspective. Most of the folders are read-only. That means we should not have the ability to delete or move or copy. We can copy, we can download, but we can't change anything in that folder. So we can't add anything new to it when we can't change anything that's already there. Each of us, however, does have edit access to our own providers folder. So in Jake's case, he does have edit access to the Beacon folder, and we'll see exactly what that means and how that works in just a minute. Just to demonstrate the search function, I'm just going to go ahead and type in LGBTQ, which will show us not only the folders and files that have that name in them, but we'll actually also see Windows is sophisticated enough to be able to find files with that text string in its content. So we see a couple of PowerPoint presentations here that have LGBTQ listed in the content, but not necessarily in the name. So that should give us a little bit more control over our search. I'm going to go ahead and select one here. Now, the workflow here is emulating the situation where Jake needs to brand one of our BLI courses for Beacon, and he's going to move it to his Beacon. He's going to copy it over to his Beacon folder. He's going to modify it as necessary, and then he's going to pass it along to Beacon for their review and even possibly modification. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this here into my clipboard. Try that again. Then I'm going to navigate to the folder where I actually want that to live. So for today's purposes, I'm going to go into Beacon, I'm going to go into Test, and I'm simply going to paste that file here. Now, because this is now intended to be a Beacon branded PowerPoint, I'm going to change the name. That's one click to select and a second click to highlight the name. I'm going to type in BHO here for Beacon Health Options, hit the Enter key to accept it. So now that PowerPoint has the name I want. Next step is to double click on it to actually do the editing. I'm just going to simply change the name here. Beacon Health Options. And yes, I know I misspelled it. I actually did that deliberately, as you'll see in a moment. And I'm going to save that. Now, autosave is turned on with Office 365 apps by default. I should actually just be able to exit this. And if I click off on anything else, click back in there, I can actually see through my preview screen here on the right that my changes were accepted. I could double click to confirm that as well, but I don't really need to. The next step is I want to share this with my counterparts at Beacon. I'm going to go into my mailbox. I'm going to create a new email. I'm going to send it to my counterpart at Beacon. New PowerPoint. and I'm going to attach that file. Now the difference here from the way we used to do it is instead of attaching a real file, an actual file that takes up space both in my sent mail as well as the inbox of the person I'm sending it to, and creates 2 new copies in addition to the one that's on my machine, what I'm going to do instead now is send a link to the actual file that lives on my machine, also lives in the cloud. It's all one file. And I'm going to do that by clicking on Browse Web Locations at the bottom here. I'm going to our shared site, which is called Balancing Life's Issues at the bottom here. And I'm going to the folder that I most recently entered, clicking on that. Actually, that brought me to one folder too deep, so I'm going to go back to Beacon. I'm going to double click on Test, and I'm going to select the one that I just created, and I'm going to insert. Now notice it doesn't say attach, it says insert. That's because instead of inserting an actual PowerPoint, it's inserting a link, and it gives me the option here of changing the permissions. So these go generally from most permissive at the top, where anyone in the world who has this link can edit it, can change it, could delete it for that matter. That scares me a little bit, so I definitely don't want to do that. The least permissive would be anyone who gets this email, anyone on the other end of this email specifically can view it. That's it. They can't make any changes. They certainly can't delete it. But I do, however, want my my colleague at Beacon to actually be able to make changes on my behalf. So I'm going to go ahead and let that person edit this, and I'm going to go ahead and send it. Should be relatively quickly that person should get the new PowerPoint, the new email in their inbox. And simply clicking on that link is going to open up that PowerPoint with my misspellings and everything right in their own machine. I can now save it, and again I can see here my title bar is telling me that file is now saved. It takes a few minutes to propagate across the cloud, but depending on the timing, if we get lucky here, I'm actually going to be able to reopen this file, and hopefully, if the demo gods are with us, we can see that the change is already propagated across. So I know that was fast, that's a lot of stuff, but I also hope I was able to demonstrate how simple our workflow can really be, and without adding untold number of versions of a single file. It's a pretty quick workflow, and it should make things a lot more efficient for us. I hope it was simple enough to understand. If not, you know how to reach me, and that's all I have. Thank you.